The year is 1972. The skies above the California desert are the stage for a contest that will shape the future of American air power. The Vietnam War has taught the U.S. Air Force a brutal lesson. Its fast, high-flying jets are vulnerable near the ground. And a new kind of warrior is needed. A warrior that can fly low, absorb incredible punishment, and protect troops in the thick of battle. This need gave birth to the Attack Experimental Program, or AX. After sifting through numerous proposals, the competition came down to two finalists, two radically different answers to the same question. First, the Northrop YA-9A, sleek, agile, and conventional. It looked like a scaled-down fighter jet, and test pilots praised its fighter-like handling and stability. It was faster than its rival by over 100 miles per hour and 2,000 pounds lighter. Its designers even incorporated a sophisticated side force control system, allowing the pilot to make small lateral adjustments without banking the aircraft, which made it an incredibly accurate platform for strafing runs. On paper and in the air, the YA-9 was a remarkable machine that met all the Air Force's requirements. But it had critical flaws hidden in its elegant design. Its engines were mounted low, under the wings. This was a conventional, efficient placement, but for an aircraft designed to operate from rough, unimproved airstrips near the front lines, it was a fatal vulnerability. The risk of sucking in rocks, dirt, and debris was dangerously high. Furthermore, its high-mounted wings, while aerodynamic, made it a nightmare for ground crews to rearm and refuel quickly under pressure. Then, there was the other contender, the Fairchild Republic YA-10A. It was slower, heavier, and, by all accounts, unconventional. Pilots found its controls sluggish compared to the nimble YA-9. But every strange angle and odd placement on the YA-10 served a single, overriding purpose: survival. Its two General Electric TF-34 engines, the same proven power plants used on the Navy's S-3 Viking, were mounted high on the tail. This placement shielded them from ground fire, kept them clear of debris, and even helped mask their heat and noise from enemy missiles. The twin vertical tails provided crucial redundancy. The A-10 was designed to fly home even if one was shot completely off. The pilot was cocooned in a cockpit built from over 1,200 pounds of titanium armor, a protective shell that would become famously known as the bathtub. The flight controls were triple redundant: two hydraulic systems, backed up by a manual system of steel cables, ensuring the pilot could keep flying even after taking catastrophic damage. But the true heart of the AX program wasn't the plane, but the weapon it was meant to carry. The Air Force didn't just want a new plane, it wanted a flying cannon. Specifically, a 30mm rotary cannon powerful enough to destroy Soviet tanks. Here lies one of the great, lesser-known facts of this competition. The revolutionary GAU-8 Avenger cannon wasn't ready in time for the fly-off. So, for the 2-month evaluation between October and December 1972, both the YA-9 and the YA-10 flew with a much smaller stand-in 20mm Vulcan cannon. The duel was fought before either contestant had their primary weapon. When the GAU-8 was finally installed in the YA-10 for testing, it was almost too powerful. The sheer volume of propellant gas fired from its 7 barrels was enough to choke the engines and cause them to flame out. Engineers had to devise a clever fix, wiring the gun's trigger to the engine's ignition system, so that every time the pilot fired, the engines would automatically attempt to reignite. On January 18, 1973, the Air Force made its decision. It didn't choose the faster, more agile aircraft. It chose the Survivor. The YA-10's ruggedness, its redundant systems, and its thoughtful, practical design for real-world combat conditions won the day. The two YA-9 prototypes were retired, their custom engines scavenged for another project. But the YA-10, the machine built around a gun it didn't even have yet, would go on to become a legend. Officially named the Thunderbolt II in honor of its World War II predecessor, the P-47 Thunderbolt, it would earn a more fitting nickname from the pilots and crews who worked with it: the Warthog, a name that perfectly captures its tough, unglamorous and utterly dominant presence on the battlefield. But the story wasn't over. Even after winning, the YA-10 had to prove its worth one more time. In 1974, it was pitted against the primary attack aircraft of the day, the LTV A-7D Corsair II. The A-7D was a combat-proven veteran of Vietnam, faster than the A-10 and equipped with one of the most advanced navigation and bombing systems in the inventory. In good weather, the A-7D was superior, but the YA-10, with its slow speed and incredible maneuverability, proved more effective under low cloud ceilings and in poor visibility, exactly the conditions where close air support is needed most. The A-10's ability to pull tight high-G turns at just 200 knots was the deciding factor, proving it could survive and re-attack in a way the faster A-7D simply couldn't.
In 1939, the skies themselves became a new battlefield. The first years of the war were defined by the bomber. German twin-engine aircraft, symbols of the Blitzkrieg, tore through the skies of Poland, France, and the Low Countries. They proved that air power could be a terrifying instrument of shock and terror. As the battle for Britain began, the night skies over London filled with the thrum of enemy engines. A new, indiscriminate warfare brought directly to the civilian. In response, Great Britain forged a sword of its own. It was a strategy born of desperation and resolve, the strategic night offensive. This was a war of endurance, a campaign to take the fight to the enemy's homeland. An entire generation of young men, pilots, navigators, bomb aimers, engineers, and gunners, were trained for this singular, perilous task. They flew in vast four-engined machines, navigating by the stars and the dim glow of the earth below, facing a gauntlet of flak and skilled night fighters. Then, in 1942, a new ally joined the fight, bringing with it a different philosophy. The Americans arrived with a bold, unproven, and incredibly dangerous idea: precision bombing in broad daylight. They believed their heavily armed, high-altitude bombers could fly in self-defending formations, like flying battleships, and surgically destroy the enemy's ability to wage war. They bet their lives on it. This set the stage for the greatest air campaign in history. Two massive air forces, one striking by day, the other by night, in a relentless, round-the-clock assault on the industrial heart of the Reich. Each machine was an engineering marvel, a complex fusion of aluminum, high-octane fuel, and raw courage. They were powered by the most advanced piston engines ever created, defended by turrets, and filled with thousands of gallons of fuel for the long, lonely trip into enemy airspace. This is the story of those machines, and the crews of young men who flew them into history. This is the story of the minds who dared to draw the future, and the pilots who risked everything to fly it.
You are watching rare and restored footage of a remarkable prototype. In the wake of the Vietnam War, a new philosophy was sweeping through the U.S. Air Force. The era of massive, complex, and costly fighter jets was being challenged by a call for something different. A smaller, more agile, and more affordable aircraft that could dominate a dogfight. This was the Lightweight Fighter program, a competition that would produce two of the most influential aircraft designs of the 20th century. Today, we look at the remarkable loser of that contest, the Northrop YF-17. Soaring through the skies above Edwards Air Force Base, the YF-17, nicknamed the Cobra, was a stunning example of advanced aeronautical design. It was Northrop's answer to the call for a new generation of air superiority fighter. The aircraft was a direct evolution of their earlier Cobra concept, refined and matured for the demanding Air Force competition. Its most striking features were its twin General Electric YJ101 engines and its unique hybrid wing design. The key to the YF-17's incredible maneuverability lay in its large leading-edge root extensions, or LERXs. These extensions generated powerful, swirling vortices of air that flowed over the wings at high angles of attack. This aerodynamic magic gave the Cobra exceptional agility and stability, allowing pilots to point its nose and turn with an authority that few other aircraft could match. It was a machine built from the ground up for the turning high-G environment of a close-range dogfight. The YF-17 was pitted against an equally revolutionary design, the single-engine General Dynamics YF-16. The competition was fierce. While both aircraft demonstrated incredible performance, the Air Force ultimately selected the YF-16, which would evolve into the legendary F-16 Fighting Falcon, citing its lower operating costs and commonality with an engine already in service. For the YF-17, losing the Air Force contract could have been the end of the story. But an entirely new opportunity was emerging. The U.S. Navy had been watching the competition with great interest. They needed a modern fighter to replace their aging F-4 Phantoms and A-7 Corsairs, but they required the added safety and redundancy of a twin-engine design for dangerous overwater carrier operations. In a stunning reversal of fortune, the Navy selected an enlarged and navalized version of the YF-17. While it may have lost the initial battle, the Cobra's design principles won the war. This direct descendant of the YF-17 would become one of the most successful and iconic aircraft in modern military history. This new naval fighter, the FA-18, would go on to serve for decades, evolving into the larger and even more capable Super Hornet. The incredible success of the entire Hornet family, flown by navies around the world, is a direct testament to the fundamental soundness of Northrop's original YF-17 design. And so, as we look back at this sleek, remarkable prototype, the YF-17 Cobra, we aren't seeing a failure. We are seeing the birth of an icon, a machine that proved its revolutionary ideas were too good to be confined to a single competition, forever changing the face of modern air power.
In August 1943, at the Quebec Conference, the tide had turned in Europe. Allied leaders could now look to the Pacific, to the immense challenge of defeating Japan. President Roosevelt knew that victory there would be won by air power, but a new kind of air power, with intercontinental reach. He made a promise that seemed impossible, to have 200 B-29 Superfortresses by March 1944. At the time, this aircraft was barely a prototype. The nation had just 7 months. It was a race against time. From all corners of America, workers flocked to the new massive plants run by Boeing, Bell, and Martin. They were veterans of the First Air War. They were farmers. They were teachers. They were a nation building a miracle. Each B-29 was a puzzle of 55,000 numbered parts, miles of wiring, and over 1 million rivets. It was the most complex machine ever put into mass production. By December, just 35 had been delivered, but the pipelines were filling. The miracle of American industry, a fusion of free people and industrial might, took hold. By the end of January, 142 B-29s, nicknamed Superforts, were in the sky. By spring, the promise was kept. 65 tons of fighting fury, the fastest and most powerful bomber in the world, was ready for our sons to fly. Half a world away, in China, the other half of the miracle was unfolding. An army of laborers, working with little more than hand tools and determination, carved the largest air bases in the world out of the wilderness. Under the guidance of a few American officers, they built the B-29's new home in just 3 months. On April 24, 1944, the 20th Bomber Command arrived. General Saunders led the parade of giants into Chengdu. The 20th Air Force, reporting directly to the Joint Chiefs in Washington, was open for business. By June, the order came: strike Japan. The target was Yawata, the Pittsburgh of the Japanese Empire, the source of their steel. 68 superforts heaved into the air, a maximum effort for that historic first mission. They crossed the Yellow Sea, and for the first time, a superfortress formation appeared over the Japanese homeland. The enemy was waiting. The flak was heavy, but 5 miles below lay the sprawling mills. Jimmy Doolittle had promised we would be back. We were. That raid was the beginning of the end. It was the first knock of a door that would be blown off its hinges, first by fire, and finally by the atom. The B-29 was the weapon that delivered that final, terrible victory.
Well, the Messerschmitt 262, in my opinion, was the most formidable fighter of World War II. They had the advantage of, when they designed this, of supersonic wind tunnels. That is clearly shown in the fuselage shape of the 262. They were also well aware of the advantages of sweepback in easing your way through the transonic speed area. The aircraft was designed with these things in mind, so it was going to be a jump ahead of its time, so to speak. When I first saw it, I realized that this was a very different looking airplane, but also at that time I hadn't fully realized just the impact its engines were going to have, because we in the early jet stages in Britain were using engines operating on the centrifugal principle of jet propulsion. The Germans started off in that area as well, but they had a sector that went onto axial flow. And of course, today every jet engine is axial flow. They were on the right track right away. But having said that they're on the right track, I must divert for a minute, because was it the right track at that time? I worked closely with Frank Whittle, who was invented or developed the jet engine. And I knew he knew all about the axial flow engine. And I said to him, Frank, why have we gone centrifugal when the Germans are going axial? And he said, because in the early stages of jet propulsion, I want to give our Air Force an engine that is simple and reliable. Now, how right he was, because in the early stages, the German jet engines, whereas Frank Whittle's centrifugal engine had an overhaul life of 100 hours, you overhauled it, the German axial flow jet engines had a scrap life of 25 hours because they didn't have the strategic metals to withstand the heat stresses at that time. So, temporarily, we were on the right track. But eventually, of course, the axial flow offered advantages in streamlining, because for a given power, you had smaller compressor and turbine discs, and also, of course, it had better specific fuel consumption. And altogether, they were on the right track there. But unfortunately, they couldn't go to the ultimate, because, as I said, they hadn't the right metals. However, as an airplane, this was something quite electrifying to fly. The cockpit, there was nothing particularly unusual. It wasn't a cluttered cockpit. It was quite simple, and it had the functional things here, and the engine instruments on the right, and generally good view, good canopy view, and being a tricycle, you had a good view ahead, So altogether, they had a lot going for it, apart from this unreliability of the engines. Even when they were in the air, they were very sensitive to throttle movement. Excessive movement, either accelerating or decelerating, could flame out the engines. And it got so bad, in fact, that eventually the way the Germans were operating was to take off at full power, then ease slowly back to climbing power, and never touch the engines thereafter until you were coming into land. They took that risk, and this didn't pay off, I don't think, because, as I say, although it has a scrap life of theoretically of 25 hours, but Adolf Galland told me at the end of the war that his unit, flying the 262 JG-44 at the end of the war, was only having an engine life average of 12.5 hours. So it goes to show what the vulnerability of that was. Firepower on this airplane, huge. 4 30mm cannon. They had forgotten one thing, and we did the same with our initial jet, experimental jet aircraft. They had forgotten how to slow it down. They did not have dive brakes. And this cost them a little because the aircraft was built mainly to deal with the B-17 Flying Fortress bombers. And when you came in on a dive to attack them, your closing speed was huge. And you couldn't open fire because of the inaccuracy of the guns above 600 yards. So let's say you opened fire at 600, you had 2 seconds before you had to break away because your closing speed was so high. If they'd had dive brakes, that could have doubled the closing speed. Now with a closing speed of 2 seconds, you're firing at random. You're not sighting, you're just pressing the button and hoping you're pointing in the right direction. With 4 seconds, you can quickly sight and adjust and fire. So it made a big difference.
From the newly won islands of the Marianas, a new kind of thunder rolls across the Pacific. These are the Superfortresses, the B-29s. Watch them, silver giants rising from the runways, bound for the very heart of the enemy. High in the stratosphere, our boys are now delivering a message of fire and steel, directly to Tokyo's war machine. But the long road to Tokyo is also paved on sky, sweeping the enemy from the air. They are the hunters, protecting our fleet, engaging in furious combat high above the blue Pacific, clearing the way for the inevitable advance. Now, in these final desperate days, the enemy American steel. Look at that screen of fire. Our gunners, men from every state back home, stand by their guns. From the heavy 5-inch batteries to the rapid-fire cannons that line every rail, they throw up a curtain of flak so
Our air forces command the skies, sweeping away the last remnants of his power. The islands we've taken, hard fought and paid for in American courage, are now the unsinkable airfields, pointing like a dagger at his homeland. There is only the unconditional surrender of a defeated foe.
This is a Yak-23, a Soviet-built jet fighter. Designed in the late 1940s, it was supplied in large numbers to the Soviet satellite countries. But this one, seen here, is being flown by an American. And despite its distinct profile, it is disguised as an American aircraft. The year is 1953. The story is true, and the circumstances fantastic. Under covert operations, this Soviet Yak-23 was taken from communist Eastern Europe, flight tested on American soil, and returned to the rightful owners without their ever learning of its absence. The top-secret examination was conducted at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. Security guards maintained a 24-hour vigil outside the restricted area, while a handful of specialists worked to uncover all the Yak-23's secrets. The entire aircraft was assembled piece by piece, and when flight tests were completed, it was then disassembled and packed up just as it had been received. Any discrepancy in positioning the pieces would surely jeopardize the operation and put certain lives in danger. Prior to this evaluation, American intelligence had considered the Yak-23 a poor combat fighter, a far cry from its contemporary, the Soviet MiG-15. This jet fighter had proven a deadly opponent in the Korean War. Among American pilots, it had generated an aura of fear and mystique. But when a North Korean defector flew a MiG-15 to a U.S. airbase in South Korea, American intelligence officers were able to dispel the myths. The U.S. Air Force quickly learned what the MiG-15 could and could not do. That was in September of 1953, just weeks before the United States would sneak the Yak-23 out of Yugoslavia. Why would the Air Force take such risks to evaluate a second-rate fighter like the Yak-23? And only weeks after it had learned everything there was to know about the best fighter the Soviets had to offer? The top-secret evaluation of the Yak-23 is surrounded by many questions, some of which still remain unanswered. Few individuals discussed it, and many are still unaware of what actually happened in this hangar years ago.
Some men are pilots. A select few become legends. In the sweltering heat and lethal skies of the Vietnam War, one name embodied the spirit of the American fighter pilot more than any other: Robin Olds. You are watching rare restored footage featuring the Hawaii-born pilot. When he arrived in Southeast Asia to command the 8th Tactical Fighter Wing, he was already a throwback to another era. A West Point graduate and a double ace from World War II, he had proven his mettle in the cockpit of the P-38 Lightning and the P-51 Mustang. He had seen the dawn of the jet age, flying the P-80 Shooting Star, and even commanding the 1st Royal Air Force Exchange Squadron, flying British Gloucester Meteors. He was a warrior forged in a different time, now tasked with leading a new generation in a new kind of war. Taking command of the F-4 Phantom unit, he found morale wavering, weighed down by frustrating rules of engagement and mounting losses. Olds changed the culture overnight. He led from the front, taking the most dangerous missions for himself and fostering a spirit of aggressive excellence that earned his unit the nickname the Wolf Pack. His famous, proudly non-regulation mustache became a symbol of this maverick defiance. His crowning achievement was a stroke of tactical genius called Operation Bolo. Knowing the North Vietnamese MiG-21s were targeting bomb-laden F-105 Thunder Chiefs, Olds laid a meticulous trap. He equipped his F-4 Phantoms with the electronics and call signs of the F-105s, mimicking their flight paths to lure the enemy into the sky. The MiGs came up, expecting vulnerable bombers, but found a sky full of lethal phantoms. On that one day, January 2nd, 1967, the Wolf Pack destroyed as many as 7 MiGs with no American losses, crippling the enemy Air Force and rewriting the rules of air combat over Vietnam. Olds's fight was not confined to the cockpit. He was a blunt and often outspoken critic of how the war was being managed from Washington. He saw firsthand the flaws in early air-to-air missile technology and the deadly consequences of restrictive policies that gave enemy fighters sanctuary. He believed the war's political micromanagement was costing American lives, a view he would later express in frank testimony to government officials. Robin Olds was more than just a triple ace with 17 victories across 2 wars. He was a brilliant commander, a leader of men, and a timeless symbol of the warrior spirit.
The horizons of warfare have shifted. No longer are we bound by the propeller-driven skirmishes of the last great conflict. Today, the security of the free world depends upon seizing the high ground, not merely the hills of a battlefield, but the very edge of the atmosphere itself. We are witnessing a bold leap into the supersonic age, a venture spearheaded by North American aviation to create a machine that defies the conventional laws of drag and heat. This is the XB-70 Valkyrie. It is a weapon forged for a singular purpose: to penetrate the deepest defenses of the Soviet bloc at 3 times the speed of sound. To achieve this, engineers had to discard the aluminum skin that clad our Mustangs and Sabres. At Mach 3, air friction generates temperatures that would melt a standard airframe. Thus, this Leviathan is constructed from a honeycomb of brazed stainless steel, a material so stubborn to work with that entirely new welding techniques had to be invented on the factory floor. Observe the geometry of the wings. They are not static. In flight, the outer sections fold downward, not for storage, but for stability. By drooping these wingtips, the aircraft captures the supersonic shock wave generated by its own nose, riding atop it like a surfer on a wave. This phenomenon, known as compression lift, allows this 200-ton giant to cruise at 70,000 feet with terrifying efficiency. Even the landing gear is a marvel of necessity. The tires are impregnated with aluminum powder, giving them a distinct silver hue. This is not for decoration, but to prevent the rubber from decomposing under the infernal heat generated by friction. Furthermore, the fuel itself plays a dual role. Before it is consumed, it circulates through the airframe to absorb the massive thermal buildup from the avionics, acting as a liquid coolant. It is a closed loop of survival, where the very lifeblood of the aircraft prevents it from melting from within. Beneath the fuselage, 6 massive General Electric turbojets, aligned side by side, drink fuel at a rate that staggers the imagination. They provide the thrust necessary to outrun any interceptor in existence. Yet, the peril lies not only in enemy fire, but in the physics of flight itself. The pilots are encased in individual ejection capsules capable of snapping shut like a clamshell to preserve life should the pressurized environment fail. We are looking at the pinnacle of strategic power, a white arrow aimed at the heart of any aggressor who dares to challenge the peace.
The F-12, Trisonic Long-Range Improved Manned Interceptor. Capable of sustained supersonic cruise at more than 2,000 miles per hour. A 2-man crew, pilot and fire control officer, fly at altitudes above 70,000 feet in a combat radius greater than 1,200 nautical miles. The airframe and engine design are optimized for Mach 3 flight. The titanium airframe surviving temperatures in excess of 600 degrees Fahrenheit. The 2 J-58 engines, producing 65,000 pounds combined thrust, equal to 4 Century Series fighter engines. Airborne, the F-12 acts as a freelance hunter-killer. The autonomous ASG-18 fire control system, a pulse Doppler clutter-free display designed to operate in any ECM environment, is backed up by 3 Block 3 AIM-47As with an aerodynamic range 20 times greater than present air-to-air missiles. An onboard computer guides the pilot to a collision course in the horizontal plane. The fire control officer monitors a self-contained inertial navigation system, feeding constant positional information to the computer. The horizontal tactics indicator displays interceptor-target relationship in an extrapolated attack, acts as a navigation aid, and provides self-test instructions for the fire control system.
Missile preparation completed. Missile is good. Have got tracking, range 75 miles. Maximum launch range in 40 seconds. Roger. The dot is set. Will to fire, special weapon enabled. Roger. Switches are on. Roger. Range 45 miles. Firing now.
Designed to fire at the F-12's optimum cruise altitude with only gross steering required by the pilot, the semi-active pulse Doppler guided missile with conventional or nuclear warhead speeds on a collision course at Mach 6. Aerodynamic range, 100 nautical miles. Sea level to 100,000 feet. Maneuverability, 22 Gs. Up, down, right or left. Complementing the radar is the infrared search and track subsystem. Infrared energy is gathered at long range, allowing early detection of supersonic targets.
IR target confirmed. Better check on our commitment. Army Control, this is Alpha X-ray 02. Have an IR target 30 degrees left. Should we hit it?
Alpha X-ray 02, that is affirmative. Freelance approved. We'll have a subsonic track for you within 10 minutes.
The F-12's ability to act as a free agent or respond to precise ground control, combined with its speed and maneuverability, give it a multiple commitment capability over a wide area of NORAD. Worldwide, the F-12 can fly across the Atlantic without refueling in little more than 2 hours. From the United Kingdom, its combat radius covers all of Europe. For Far East deployment, F-12s could make the 7,200-mile trans-Pacific flight to the Philippines in 5 hours with just 2 refuelings and be effective in combat over a wide area. The YF-12A has been flying successfully for a number of years, logging several hundred hours. Even better performance can be expected in the production model. The airframe is a duplicate of the SR-71, an outgrowth of the original YF-12A program. Removing ventral fins and extending chines forward improve aerodynamic stability, increase fuel capacity, and gross takeoff weight. Additional fuel and improved engines extend the ferry range. Payload is increased to 4 missiles. Folding fins allow internal installation, and a trapeze rail launcher permits checkout of 85% of missile functions before launch. A new antenna provides significantly more detection range, more than 100 nautical miles against a medium bomber target. And infrared system performance is improved. The F-12, holder of 9 world records, truly represents a giant step forward in aircraft technology and performance. The first titanium airframe, first sustained supersonic cruise, first pulse Doppler clutter-free radar, and a fire control system designed to operate autonomously. With long-range, highly maneuverable missiles fired from optimum cruise altitude at trisonic speeds, in a performance envelope many times greater than our present capability, the F-12 stands ready today to meet the air defense needs of the 1970s and beyond.
This is the year 1945. The Second World War enters its final desperate chapter. In the vast blue expanse of the Pacific, the United States Navy stands as a steel fist closing on the Japanese homeland. But the enemy has unleashed a new terrifying weapon. A weapon born of ancient warrior code and modern desperation. They call it the kamikaze, the divine wind, a grim echo of the typhoon that saved their ancestors from invasion centuries ago. But these are not seasoned veterans in gleaming machines. The terrible truth is, most are young men barely out of school, given just 40 or 50 hours of flight training before their one and only mission. Their planes are often obsolete, packed with explosives, their landing gear locked in place. They are told that this is the ultimate honor, and while statistics show that less than 1 in 5 ever reaches a target, the damage from a single successful strike is catastrophic. A single pilot can cripple a fleet carrier, taking it out of the war. At Okinawa, some of our finest vessels are knocked out of the fight for good, their wooden flight decks burning furiously, causing more aircraft losses on deck than were lost in entire battles just years earlier. And the enemy's desperation breeds new tactics. They don't just rely on their old airplanes. They are now developing other ways to strike. Strange, purpose-built craft carried into battle and released close to our ships. In their final terrifying dive, they reach speeds that are almost impossible to track. To fight this menace, our Navy throws up its own wall of steel. Our rugged carrier workhorses, our ace-maker fighters swarm the skies. They are stable, reliable gun platforms, achieving staggering kill ratios against the enemy. But even they cannot stop them all. How do you stop a man who is determined to die? The 20mm and 40mm guns on our destroyers throw up a curtain of fire, but often it isn't enough to physically destroy the plane. A burning, wingless wreck can still complete its mission. The answer has come from our scientists, a top-secret marvel of ingenuity. A marvelous new kind of artillery shell for our 5-inch guns. This shell doesn't need a direct hit. It's packed with intricate parts, and it can sense when it is close to the enemy. It explodes in the air right in the plane's path, blasting it from the sky with a cloud of shrapnel. It is this, our new magic ammunition, that is turning the tide. It is a battle of iron will against iron technology. And in this final terrible contest, technology will prevail.
In an age before transcontinental jetliners, when ocean voyages were measured in weeks, a German visionary dared to dream of flying passenger ships across the world's great waters. The year was 1929, and from the shores of Lake Constance emerged a marvel of aviation engineering, the Dornier Do X. This colossal seaplane was not just an aircraft. It was a grand hotel with wings, a floating palace designed to usher in a new era of luxurious global travel. This footage invites us aboard for a first-hand look at this magnificent Leviathan. With 12 mighty engines mounted in 6 tandem pairs above its wings, the DOX was a sight to behold, a testament to German ambition and ingenuity. Step inside and you're transported to an era of elegance. Its 3 decks boasted lavish passenger cabins, a dining salon, a smoking room, and even a bar. Imagine the sheer audacity of it. 150 passengers could be accommodated in relative comfort, a number unheard of for an aircraft of its time. A lesser-known fact about this airborne behemoth is the sheer manpower required for its operation. Its crew complement wasn't just pilots and navigators. It included a dedicated flight engineer for each bank of engines, managing their complex operations during flight. On top of that, stewards attended to the passengers, providing a level of service akin to a luxury liner. The DOX embarked on an ambitious journey in 1930, attempting a circumnavigation of the globe. This grand tour, captured in parts of this film, was fraught with challenges and delays, demonstrating the immense logistical hurdles of early long-range aviation. From engine troubles in Lisbon to a wing fire in Africa, The journey was a testament to the perseverance of its crew and the pioneering spirit of the age. While the full global circuit wasn't completed, its transatlantic crossing to New York in 1931 captivated the American public, proving that such immense machines could bridge oceans. It was a vision of the future, a testament to humanity's endless quest to conquer the skies, even if the commercial realities of its time proved too formidable to overcome.
In the vast, dark expanse of the Pacific War, a different kind of hunter prowled the night skies. They were not sleek fighters, but lumbering, long-range flying boats with a deadly purpose. We now uncover the incredible history of the PBY Catalina patrol bombers in The Story of the Black Cats. Now restored and in full color, this film reveals the crucial, often overlooked role of these versatile aircraft. Painted black for camouflage, the Black Cats flew daring, low-level missions under the cover of darkness. They became the scourge of Japanese shipping, disrupting vital supply lines with torpedoes and bombs. A fascinating part of their story is their dual role. By day, these same aircraft transformed into angels of mercy. Known as Dumbos, they flew perilous air-sea rescue missions, saving countless downed airmen from the sea. This is the story of the crews who mastered the slow but resilient PBY, turning it into a legendary weapon and a symbol of hope in the lonely Pacific.
The Atlantic is cold, the Pacific is vast, and the Iron Curtain stands rigid against the free world. In this new age of atomic anxiety, the United States Navy demands a weapon of unprecedented reach and fury. They require a machine capable of launching from a carrier deck, piercing the sound barrier, and delivering a nuclear payload deep into the heart of the enemy before the radar operators can even blink. North American Aviation, the same titans who gave us the Mustang and the Sabre, answers the call with a silhouette that looks like it was carved from a single block of speed. Behold the A5 Vigilante. It is a marvel of aerodynamic purity. Observe the lines. There are no bulbous turrets, no hanging pods to drag against the wind. It is sleek, sharp, and terrifyingly fast. Powered by two General Electric J79 engines, the same brutes pushing the Phantom, this Leviathan screams across the heavens at Mach 2. But unlike its contemporaries, the Vigilante hides a bizarre secret within its belly. It possesses no bomb bay doors that open to the wind. Instead, the engineers have devised a linear bomb bay, a tunnel running the length of the fuselage between the engines. The nuclear weapon is not dropped. It is spat out the back like a shell from a cannon, attached to two fuel tanks in a long, deadly train. Ingenuity, however, walks a fine line with insanity. The sheer complexity of this rear ejection system baffles the mind. On the rolling deck of a carrier, the stores train is prone to mechanical rebellion, sometimes refusing to launch, or worse, threatening to slide out during a catapult shot, leaving the bomb bouncing on the flight deck while the aircraft roars into the sky. It is a flaw that threatens to ground a masterpiece. Yet underneath that gleaming skin lies the brain of the future. The Vigilante is one of the first aircraft to rely on a digital computer, the Verdun, to navigate the featureless oceans. It utilizes titanium structures and gold-plated engine bays to survive the searing heat of supersonic flight. When the nuclear mission fades, the Vigilante finds a new calling. It sheds its bomber identity to become the RA-5C, the all-seeing eye of the fleet. Loaded with cameras and sensors, it dashes over hostile territory in Vietnam. This is the story of a plane that was perhaps too advanced for its own good.
The year is 20th century. From the deserts of California comes a shape so radical, so unlike anything in the skies, that it seems to belong to another world. This is the future of American air power. A future without tails, without fuselages, and without drag. But the road to this marvel began years ago with a humble yellow pioneer, the Northrop N1M. Known affectionately as the Jeep, this flying laboratory was built of wood and tubular steel, designed to be changed on the fly. Its wingtips could be drooped or straightened by ground crews searching for the perfect aerodynamic balance. It was underpowered and difficult to handle, but it proved a vital truth to Jack Northrop. The flying wing was not just a dream, it was a possibility. From that small seed grew a giant, the mighty YB-35, a true intercontinental bomber powered by 4 massive Pratt & Whitney Wasp major engines driving contra-rotating pusher propellers. It was a beast of efficiency, designed to carry heavy loads further than any conventional plane. But the complexity of its gearboxes and the vibration of its propellers plagued the program. It was a piston engine marvel, born into the dawn of the jet age, a glorious dinosaur struggling to find its footing in a changing world. To survive, the wing had to evolve. The propellers were stripped away, replaced by 8 powerful Allison jet engines buried deep within the airframe. Reborn as the YB-49, this silver phantom shattered records, crossing the continent from California to Washington faster than any bomber before it. Yet, without the stabilizing drag of a tail, it is a wild stallion. It hunts in the sky, drifting in yaw, demanding a pilot's constant attention. It is a machine waiting for a technology that does not yet exist, an electronic brain to tame its instability. To the public, it looks like a visitor from Mars. To the Air Force, it is a question mark. Is it a bomber, a reconnaissance platform, or a dead end? Despite the tragedy and the politics that shadow its wings, one thing is certain. We are looking at the purest form of flight. A clean, uninterrupted surface that cheats the wind and hints at a future where our aircraft might one day be invisible to the enemy's eye. This is the story of a vision too advanced for its own time. South Pacific, 1943. The struggle for the Solomon Islands has become a grinding war of attrition. It is a battle fought over vast stretches of open ocean and steaming jungle islands, where the heat and malaria are enemies as deadly as the Japanese Zeros. In this theater, victory depends on air superiority, and the United States Marine Corps is throwing a new breed of fighter into the fray. To conquer these skies, American industry produced a machine of terrifying power, the Vought F-4U Corsair. To the enemy, it is the whistling death. To the Marines who fly it, it is the Ensign Eliminator, a beast that demands respect. Its distinctive inverted gull wing design was born of necessity, not aesthetics. The engineers needed to mount the largest propeller ever attached to a fighter plane, and the bent wings provided the necessary ground clearance without requiring landing gear that was too long and fragile for carrier decks. It is a paradox of aviation history that this very design feature, intended for Navy carriers, initially made the aircraft too difficult to land on a moving deck. The long nose blocked the pilot's view, and the landing gear had a tendency to bounce. Rejected by the Navy for carrier duty, the Corsair found its home with the land-based Marines. Here, on crushed coral runways carved out of the jungle, the 2,000 horsepower double Wasp engine could finally be unleashed. But a machine is only as good as the men who fly it, and in the chaotic reinforcement shuffle of the Pacific War, a unique unit was forged. Assembled from replacements, pool pilots, and veterans who had no squadron to call their own, they were a scratch unit. They did not fit the mold of the polished parade ground officers. They were rugged, independent, and led by a commander who was decades older than most of his men. A man who had already flown and fought with the Flying Tigers in China before America even entered the war. These men lived in tents, fought in the air, and survived on sheer grit. They developed tactics that utilized the Corsairs' blistering speed and dive performance to counter the agile Japanese fighters. They flew long, exhausting fighter sweeps, often outnumbered, relying on teamwork and aggression to clear the skies from Rabaul to Bougainville. What you are about to see is the record of that time. It is a look at the machinery of war and the human spirit that drives it. From the roar of the radial engines on a tropical morning to the desperate dogfights high above the clouds, this is the story of how a group of so-called misfits became one of the most effective fighting forces in the history of naval aviation. The heat shimmers off the Mojave floor as the grandmother of the jet age touches down. Here is the North American XB-70 during landing. It rides its own shockwave, a phenomenon known as compression lift. We look back to where it began, the Bell X-1. We are testing the encapsulated ejection seat, a pressurized pod that snaps shut to protect the airman from the violence of a Mach 2 bailout. The desert floor is not just a runway, it is a laboratory for the rugged. The mighty Hercules, the C-130, ignores the concrete to grapple with the loose earth. On the tarmac sits the sleek Northrop F-5B. Small, agile, and relatively simple, it is the freedom fighter. The aerodynamics honed here will influence lightweight fighter design for decades. Now we aim for the stars. This is the Lockheed NF-104A. It is a Frankenstein of performance, a jet fighter with a rocket engine bolted to the tail. It carries reaction control thrusters on the nose and wingtips because at 100,000 feet, the air is too thin for rudders. This is the classroom for astronauts, the only place where a pilot can see the curvature of the Earth and still land for dinner. Innovation turns vertical. The Ryan Vertifan challenges the helicopter. It does not tilt its engines. Instead, it diverts jet exhaust to drive massive lift fans buried inside the wings themselves. A fan-in-wing concept so radical it allows a jet to hover motionless in the desert air before dashing away at subsonic speeds. Even the civilian fleets come to the desert for their trials. Here is the Boeing 727. Look closely at the wings of the Northrop X-21. You are witnessing laminar flow control. Is it a boat? Is it a plane? It is the M2F1 lifting body. Built of plywood and tubular steel, this flying bathtub has no wings. It generates lift solely from the shape of its fuselage. The LTV XC-142 rejects compromise. It is a transport that refuses to choose between speed and verticality. The entire wing tilts skyward. 4 turboprops scream to lift 30 tons straight up. And here is the remarkable F-111 Aardvark, demonstrating the swing wing. It spreads wide for takeoff and sweeps back for supersonic penetration. From sand pits to the stratosphere, Edwards Air Force Base is where the future is hammered into reality. From the mist-shrouded airfields of East Anglia, a new thunder rolls across the English Channel. This is the 8th Air Force Fighter Command, the tip of the spear in the battle for the roof of Europe. For years, the bomber streams fought their way to the target alone, bleeding at every mile. But the equation has changed. Under the aggressive leadership of General Jimmy Doolittle, the leash has been taken off. The order is no longer just to protect the big friends. It is to pursue and destroy the enemy wherever he flies or hides. The operation begins with a complex aerial relay. The heavyweights, the Republic P-47 Thunderbolts, take the first leg. These 7-ton monsters, powered by the massive double Wasp engine, are virtually indestructible. They batter their way across the channel, clearing the path. But as their fuel gauges drop, they must turn back. This is the critical moment. High above the clouds, the relief guard arrives, the North American P-51 Mustangs. With their laminar flow wings and auxiliary fuel tanks, the Mustangs possess the legs to go where no fighter has gone before, all the way to Berlin and back. The technological gap is widening. Our pilots, flying machines built with superior American know-how and fueled by high-octane gasoline, are meeting a Luftwaffe that is running on empty. The enemy pilots, brave as they are being overwhelmed by better equipment, better planning, and sheer numbers. When the German fighters rise to intercept, they are met with a wall of 50 caliber fire. The dogfights are brutal and short. Shattered morale and burning wreckage are all that remain of the Luftwaffe's once proud defense plan. The skies over the capital become property of the Allies. But as the aerial opposition fades, a new and deadlier game begins. With no one left to fight at 30,000 feet, our boys go down to the deck. They hunt the enemy on his own aerodromes. This is strafing, the most savage form of fighter warfare. Screaming over the treetops at 400 miles an hour, our pilots catch the enemy dispersed in the woods, hiding under camouflage nets that fail to deceive sharp eyes. It is open season on these sitting ducks, but the cost is terrible. Down here, the advantage of altitude is gone. They face intense light flak, sheets of machine gun fire from towers, and the desperate resistance of ground troops. The losses in these low-level attacks are 4 times heavier than in aerial combat. Yet the boys from Illinois, Wyoming, and Texas never flinch. They drive their flaming wrecks into the ground or limp home with shattered wings, having smashed the frontline strength of the German Air Force forever. There is perhaps no silhouette in the sky more instantly recognizable nor more graceful than that of the Supermarine Spitfire. Born from a lineage of high-speed racing seaplanes, it arrived just as the shadow of war began to lengthen across Europe. It was a machine that combined lethal efficiency with an aesthetic beauty rarely seen in weapons of war. A testament to the idea that if an aircraft looks right, it will fly right. However, the path to perfection is rarely a straight line. The initial designs were deemed unsatisfactory by the brilliant chief designer, R.J. Mitchell. He embarked on a radical redesign, aided by a new Air Ministry specification for an 8-gun fighter and the arrival of the Rolls-Royce PV-12 engine. By 1936, the vision was realized. With a closed cockpit, retractable undercarriage, and the new Merlin engine, the prototype astounded observers. The Royal Air Force immediately placed the largest order in Supermarine's history. Tragically, Mitchell died in 1937, passing away with the knowledge that he had designed a world beater that would become the savior of his nation. The torch was passed to Joe Smith, who took over management of the design team. Under his guidance, the Spitfire underwent a constant metamorphosis to meet the grueling demands of total war. The early Mach I, already an improvement on the prototype with its Merlin II engine and variable pitch propeller, was just the beginning. The scope of development during the conflict was enormous. As the enemy fielded faster aircraft, the Rolls-Royce engineers responded with more power, and Supermarine responded with refined airframes. The Spitfire donned many guises, carrying cannons, rockets, and bombs to serve as both a dogfighter and a ground attack aircraft. High-speed, unarmed versions, stripped of heavy guns, flew deep into enemy territory for photographic reconnaissance. It was a machine that refused to become obsolete, fighting on the front lines from the first day of the war to the very last.
Once Jeffrey Quill and I sat down together and we were discussing this, which was our favorite Spitfire. And I said to him, now let's tell each other, let's get a piece of paper and scribble down our favorite marks. And we both put down the same mark, which was the Mach 12, which was a Griffin engine with the clipped wings. And it was a delightful hour at low level. It wasn't terribly good at high altitude, but the later Machs were specifically developed for high altitude work, but it was for sheer flying exhilaration.
Here's an unfortunate accident, two of our planes.
You are watching extraordinary World War II color footage filmed or edited by Jack Lieb before and during D-Day. This is unlike anything you've seen. Using his personal 16mm Kodachrome camera, Lieb gives us a unique, intimate perspective. His journey takes the viewer from the D-Day preparations in England through the liberation of Paris and eventually into Germany. Along the way, he documented the lives of ordinary people in France, interspersed with glimpses of celebrities like Ernest Hemingway.
Here we see some pictures made by automatic cameras that were installed in the fighter planes, because when a pilot reported that he had shot down an enemy plane, he wasn't given credit unless his pictures proved that the plane was shot down. And these automatic cameras would operate in conjunction with his machine guns. And if you look closely, you'll see the pilot jump out of the plane in the shot. But you notice, too, that a lot of these planes are still carrying the extra fuel tanks that they were carrying underneath the wing. And whenever the bullets hit that tank, the plane would explode, as you will see here. But when you saw shots like this, you know that the pilot never got back. Of course, these heavy guns caused terrific concussion, and it was difficult to hold a handheld camera that long. One of the first things that the Americans did was to build an airstrip in the St. Mary Glees area, not far from the coast. And they used a strip that was supported by metal wire to keep the planes from sinking into the ground. And they were using it also as a place to take off from with 500-pound bombs under each wing. But the strip was so rough that frequently the bombs would break loose, and even though they were armed, they had to be disarmed and taken off the runway. These are P-47s that they were using here, and there's one carrying a bomb under each wing to attack the enemy deep in behind the lines. You notice these two planes taking off at once, raising considerable dust, but managing to get off a very short runway. And here you notice a plane, you notice the buckle under the wheels. This sometimes caused the mesh wire to break and come up and hit the plane's propeller, causing it to crash before it left the ground.
To provide for a wide margin of air superiority in any operational area and meet any threat to our strike forces, the Navy, with Grumman Aircraft, has under development a brand new carrier-based fighter. Designed to ensure fighter deployment in a minimum of time, the F-14 will use the flight-proven TF-30P-412 engines and the new but developed AUG-9 weapons control system. At the same time, the program provides for planned growth factors in speed and range to guarantee superiority in the years to come. This new weapon system is the F-14. The F-14 is all-fighter. Multi-mission capability has not been permitted to dilute the original concept or degrade the performance required to outfly and outfight any aircraft encountered. Comparable in size to the F-4, it is a twin-tailed, swing-wing, twin-engined airplane, carrying a mix of weapons and a two-man crew, pilot and missile control officer. A one-piece bubble canopy and tandem seating provide all-around clear vision that enables the fighter crew to easily detect and maintain visual contact with the enemy. The swing-wing design provides optimal geometry over a full spectrum of speeds. Swept forward, the wings provide the lift for low wind-over-the-deck launches and on-carrier landings at 120 knots. In addition, when swept forward, they provide endurance required for combat air patrol missions, coupled with instant flexibility to accelerate to supersonic dash speeds. Swept back to 68 degrees, the airplane is just what it appears to be,
a high-performance, highly maneuverable fighter. The F-14 weapon system will include a three-phased program of development. It is a program of planned growth to assure ever-increasing performance as advanced technology engines and avionics become available. The three phases are designated A, B, and C. Phase A will use the flight-proven TF-30P412 engines, coupled with the AUG-9 weapon control system, a low-risk program that will permit deployment of the airplane in the shortest possible time. Carried in external pods, both for ease of maintenance and to provide optimum straight-line airflow to the compressor face, each engine will deliver nearly 20,500 pounds of thrust. Two engines will make the F-14A capable of speeds of Mach 2.4 in combat configuration. The second phase of development, the F-14B, introduces the advanced technology engine into the basic F-14A airframe, providing a total of 55,000 pounds of thrust at a combined weight saving of over 1,200 pounds. As the airframe was sized and configured from the onset to accept the advanced technology engines, only minimal modifications to the inlet will be required. For the third phase, an F-14C will carry an even more advanced multi-mission avionics suite, but using the F-14B engine-airframe combination unchanged. The design of the F-14 provides a combination of thrust to weight and a wing loading that result in very high fighter agility, the ability to engage and disengage the enemy at will, with maneuverability to bring weapons to bear on all enemy aircraft. In the air combat maneuverability environment, the F-14 will have no equal. The first chart indicates the outstanding dash times of the airplane on a standard day in level flight acceleration. Time in minutes is on the left, Mach speed along the bottom. The blue line indicates a combat loading of 4 Sparrows. The orange line shows the same conditions for a loading of 6 Phoenix. A Mach sweep programmer will automatically position the wing for best fighter performance. High G performance is assured over the entire speed spectrum. Load factors in G are on the left. Specific excess power in feet per second across the bottom. Flight conditions are Mach 0.9 at 10,000 feet, clean configuration, with 50% fuel remaining. The F-4J is indicated in orange. The F-14A is shown in blue, while the F-14B is indicated by the green line. A fast-acting, pilot-controlled maneuvering flap enhances combat agility in the subsonic, transonic speed ranges. This chart again indicates load factors on the left, Mach numbers on the bottom. The unshaded line on the left indicates Gs available without the maneuvering flap. The shaded portion indicates the extra Gs available with the flap, both at sea level. The curve on the right hand indicates the same conditions at 15,000 feet. Note how the maneuverability envelope extends smoothly to the structural limits of the airplane. Glove vanes extend from the leading edge of the fixed portion of the wing at Mach 1. This feature offsets the shift in the airplane's aerodynamic center at Mach 1, leaving the horizontal stabilizer free for maneuvering, while minimizing trim drag effects. Our final chart shows the glove vane benefit in instantaneous maneuvering envelopes. Altitude is on the left in thousands of feet. Mach numbers are indicated on the bottom. The solid lines indicate maneuverability without glove vanes at 1G, 3Gs, and 5Gs. The shaded areas indicate the improvements provided by the glove vanes. These parameters of performance have been achieved by both advanced design and construction techniques that provide a relatively lightweight airframe coupled with the extremely efficient use of available engine thrust. In the F-14B, The thrust-to-weight ratio will be of the order of 1.2 at combat weight. This adds up to one thing. Going into combat against any likely threat, the F-14 will be the clearly superior fighter. The F-14 is designed and sized for a modified AUG-9 weapons control system. In the advanced stages of a successful development and test program, the AUG-9 will provide optimum weapons control for both close-in air-to-air engagements as well as the long-range standoff attack. The air combat mode enables rapid selection of any desired air-to-air ordnance, M61 gun, Sidewinder missiles, Sparrow missiles, and the Phoenix missile. To give the fighter crew real-time information while in combat, the cockpit has 6 computer-coupled visual displays. Of primary importance is the pilot's heads-up display. The heads-up display, or HUD as it is sometimes referred to, will provide attack information on the pilot's windshield with the following symbols: the steering symbol, the range scale, and maximum and minimum firing ranges and envelopes. In a typical short-range Sparrow attack, the heads-up display will look like this on the pilot's windshield. The heads-up display also has a carrier landing mode that gives the pilot real-time information on his landing glide slope position. For attack steering, the pilot may also refer to the vertical display indicator. Radar homing and warning displays are presented to the pilot on the horizontal display, along with navigation information. The missile control officer has, in addition to his tactical information display, a detailed data display which gives him raw radar information. He also has a radar homing and warning display that supplies enemy radar information, as well as surface-to-surface missile threat information. These displays provide the F-14 crew with the total informational input required to fight and survive in any operational area, but are especially valuable against the ground-controlled interceptor threat in the ACM environment. The F-14 weapon system has been optimized for the basic 4-Sparrow fighter mission. In this configuration, the F-14 will have sufficient internal fuel to escort strike groups on 500-mile range missions without in-flight refueling, and still be capable of 2 minutes of air combat over the target at combat power. Weapons flexibility is achieved without affecting prime mission performance by preloading other ordnance, such as Phoenix missiles, on interchangeable weapons rail segments. This palletized concept for Phoenix allows the F-14 design weight to be held to that required on the Sparrow Sidewinder dogfighter only. Phoenix are carried strictly as an overload and do not affect the basic weight of the F-14. The pallets are on board only when the weapons requiring them are carried, otherwise they remain in the magazine. Weapons configurations can include combinations such as 6 Sparrows and 4 Sidewinders, 6 Phoenix missiles, 4 Sidewinders, and 2 450-gallon drop tanks, or combinations of Mark 83 iron bombs with Sidewinders or Mark 84 iron bombs with Sidewinders. In addition to the wide variety of stores that can be carried, the M61 integral gun provides the necessary firepower for close-in air-to-air combat. The F-14 has been designed for simplified maintainability and rapid turnaround between missions. As an example of this simplified maintainability, the Mark 61 gun can be aligned with the aircraft datum line without jacking or leveling the aircraft. A high-intensity beam is directed on the calibrating lens attached to the barrel. The gun mounts are then adjusted until the azimuth and elevation needles on the alignment scale are zeroed. The technique is so simple that the gun may be aligned on a carrier deck between launches. 6 Phoenix missiles are loaded in 18 minutes using standard Aero 21A skids. Integral hoists are provided for raising and lowering rail segments. The nacelle pod installation of the power plants provides quick access for routine inspection or engine oil replacement. 80% of engine accessory corrective maintenance and replacement can be accomplished with these doors open. In addition to routine maintenance, the doors permit easy engine removal and replacement. The entire task, removal and replacement of one engine, can be accomplished in 3 hours by 4 maintenance personnel using a Model 4000A engine stand. Power plants are interchangeable between right and left nacelles. They can be removed from the side or the rear. To facilitate quick repairs and shorten turnaround times, rapid determination of avionic equipment status is provided by a computer-processed built-in systems test. Automatic in-flight fault detection will indicate a failure of a replaceable assembly on the Missile Control Officer's tactical information display. Onboard checkout means that the fighter crew can have full confidence in Phoenix missile readiness prior to committing the F-14 to an engagement. With excellent accessibility, corrective maintenance of 80% of the avionic equipment is possible without work stands. For more avionic accessibility, the nose landing gear strut can be lowered 14 inches. To replace an avionics unit, front-mounted connectors and quick-release latches make this quickly possible without using tools. Avionic equipment will be compatible with the Navy's versatile avionics shop test system, known as VAST. The F-14A, first of a 3-model program, is scheduled for first flight in January 1971, exactly 2 years after contract award. BIS trials will commence in June 1972, with fleet introduction in April of 1973. Similar to the history of the F-4, the great majority of airplanes built will be F-14Bs, using the advanced technology engines and marking the second phase of the program. The F-14B is scheduled for first flight in 1972, with fleet introduction in early 1974. We may be able to advance the F-14B if the engine development program continues to go well. As engines become available, F-14As can be retrofitted. The third mode, the F-14C, will have the F-14AB airframe and the F-14B advanced technology engines, but will be equipped with avionics that take advantage of ongoing advances in micro-miniaturization and solid-state electronics. In addition, it will significantly improve air-to-ground weapons delivery, adding all-weather to visual. The F-14C will be introduced when the new avionics are developed and ready.
Fiddler, high-speed Soviet fighter. Flagon, the Su-11, all-weather, long-range, advanced fire control system, deadly air-to-air capability. Fishpad, the MiG-21, the latest Soviet fighter exported to satellite countries. Maneuverability, comparable to the top U.S. Navy fighter. Foxbat, the MiG-23, another new high-performance Soviet fighter. Higher top speed, higher altitude than the fighter in the current Navy inventory. The next identifiable fighter threat. Added to this threat, there is the Blinder and Badger, Soviet bombers capable of launching any of 4 different missiles at standoff ranges up to 150 miles. In addition, there is the ever-present threat from surface-to-surface or surface-to-air missiles from either shore stations or missile-carrying Soviet ships. The basic problem is that our stable of Navy fighters to meet these threats is rapidly losing its edge. Our F-8 Crusader was started in late 1952, over 15 years ago. It became operational 11 years ago. Our F-4 was a clearly superior fighter when it became operational in 1961. Now the gap is closing. It is a tribute to the skill of the nation's fighter pilots that a high kill ratio has been maintained in Vietnam. We cannot depend on maintaining this margin indefinitely. The time has come to equal the skill of our fighter pilots with a far superior fighter aircraft, one that will be superior now and for the next 15 years. The new Navy fighter, the F-14, is an air superiority weapons system designed around a combat weapons load of 4 Sparrows, but with configuration flexibility that include Phoenix and Sidewinder missiles, coupled with an M61 gun. It is built to meet the enemy in the air anywhere, and the threat to the attack carrier striking force during the mid-1970s to 1980s. This F-14 has been the subject of some discussion in the press and magazines, particularly so in Washington. Some right and some wrong. The time has come to set the story straight. This is the first of a series of film briefing reports concerning the F-14 program. I am determined that the naval aviators of the fleet get the straight word on this great new fighter. As you have seen, the F-14 will be an optimal combination of speed, acceleration, maneuverability, and radius of action, including a fire control system with multiple weapons options. It has been designed from inception to grow in performance as technology permits, and is well suited to Navy fighter missions and air-to-air combat, fighter sweeps, combat air patrol, and all-weather interceptions for many years to come. The F-14 has been evaluated as a low-risk technical program, and it is. But there are risks other than those of hardware. These are the challenges that fighter crews face each time they catapult to meet the enemy. The odds can be optimized only by introducing the finest fighting machine the Navy can procure. In the final analysis, however, the effectiveness of a weapon system rests with the men who use it. And even as they go forth, time and time again, to meet the ever-present threats that face our nation, they will continue, as they have always, to give their best. We could ask no more of them. In developing this weapon system for them, we will do no less.
The Blohm Voss company was one of the first to respond with their BV-141. Designed around the concept of maximum all-round view, the BV-141 was in many ways a problem looking for a solution. The unorthodox design featured an asymmetric layout with the radial engine installed at the front end of a portside tail boom and an extensively glazed crew nacelle mounted to starboard. Unusual and radical in design, the BV-141 performed surprisingly well, but in the end it was considered too unconventional and it was cancelled in 1943.
Yes, in my meanderings throughout Germany, just after the capitulation, I was looking for unusual or advanced technology aircraft. And the 141 intrigued me a little, but I had heard that they were at an airfield called Größenhain, which was quite near Meissen. There was a big reconnaissance unit, which had many reconnaissance types of aircraft, and I thought maybe the 141 will appear there. So I flew there, and there was no sign of one, but I asked if I could speak to some of the POWs who were in the cage there, and one of the chaps told me that a 141 had indeed been there, but the last he remembered of it was not too long ago. It had had an engine problem while flying nearby and had landed on an emergency strip east of Grossenhain. So I flew over in that direction looking for this strip. But it wasn't really a strip I found, it was a small airfield. And it was, by this time I'd moved into the Russian occupation zone. And I decided to land there because I had already found that that stage after the war, the Russians were still very amenable to the Brits because we had come in at the early stages of the war to help them. Anyway, when I landed, there weren't a lot of aircraft there, and there was a Russian commissar and with an interpreter, and I asked if there was a 141 there. He didn't really know things like the aircraft numbers, but he said there were one or two aircraft left, but his people had examined the airfield, taken away what they wanted, and the rest was left for destruction. So I said, could I have a look around, see what it was? He said, well, yes, why not, because it's all going to be destroyed anyway. And in one hangar there was indeed a 141. It had regularly had its engines run up by Feldwebel, who was available, and I said to him, was the aircraft flyable? And he declared, oh yes, it was. I rather suspected his motive, so I wasn't too sure of what he was saying or believing what he was saying, because I think he had hoped I would fly him out of there and out of the Russian zone. But the Russians were obviously not going to play with that. Anyway, I thought I'll take his word for it and have a go at this. And the commissar didn't object. He said, as long as I stayed within sight of the airfield, and I'd only have enough fuel to do that, he didn't mind, because it was due for destruction anyway. And so he let me fly that, and I had about 30 to 40 minutes in it to try out this theory that it flew very nicely in a straight line when on an angle of bank of 90 degrees. And after about 2 or 3 goes at this at various speeds and heights, I had trouble with the engine, so I had to return to base.
It stands as one of the most unusual shapes to ever grace a British airfield, a true curiosity of the Second World War. At Miles Aircraft, based in Reading, Berkshire, there was always an innovative streak, a willingness to challenge convention.
People were very appreciative of the fact that Miles had this wonderful innovatory streak in them, and that they might come up trumps with something.
And in the midst of war, this inventive spirit produced the Libellula. During the war, the Miles factories were working overtime, contributing vital training aircraft to the war effort. But the company's top designers, led by George Miles, were captivated by a far more radical idea. They were sketching a machine that looked years ahead of its time, resurrecting the all-but-forgotten canard, or tandem wing layout. This was not just innovation for its own sake. It was a solution to a deadly serious problem. The Royal Navy was losing pilots at an alarming rate during carrier landings. Conventional fighters, with their long noses and massive engines, gave the pilot a terrible forward view, forcing them to approach the deck in a blind, side-slipping turn. The Libellula, named for the dragonfly it resembled, solved this. By placing the pilot in a glazed nose and moving the main wing to the rear, it offered a perfectly unobstructed view. The smaller forward wing, or canard, acted as the stabilizer. Its tandem layout also meant it was compact, eliminating the need for heavy, complex wing-folding mechanisms. While soldiers fought on the front lines, the workers on the home front, men and women side by side, were given the mighty task of building this strange new plane. The first prototype, the M35, was a single-engine wooden test bed. In a remarkable feat of wartime urgency, it was designed and built in just a few months. Those at Miles were determined to see what this machine could do. As the M35 was readied for its first flight, engineers made final inspections. The company had a huge investment in its success, hoping for government approval and eventually mass production. Once in the air, the small prototype, powered by a single de Havilland Gypsy Major engine, proved the concept could fly. Its tandem wing layout offered stable flight, and its tricycle landing gear provided excellent ground handling. But the M35 was only a stepping stone. The real goal was its sister plane, the M39B. This was the full-scale twin-engine version designed to meet an official requirement for a high-speed bomber. It too would have given its crew a revolutionary view, free from the obstruction of a wing. Yet for all its brilliance, the Libellula was plagued by complexity. The M35 prototype proved to be a test pilot's nightmare.
So the Libellula, the problem was to control the aircraft for takeoff and landing. It had two sets of flaps with 5 settings for each set. So you had a potential 10 combinations. This was difficult because getting the right combination was one thing, because every time you changed the combination, it had some effect on the controllability of the aircraft. And it was really impractical.
Ultimately, complexity became its Achilles heel. Despite the optimism of its designers, the Libellula was destined for a political landing. By 1944, the tide of the war had turned. With America and the Soviet Union as allies, the need for high-risk, unconventional weapons evaporated. The Air Ministry chose to invest in proven, conventional designs. The Libellula, a machine of truly brilliant, if flawed design, became one of the war's most fascinating what-ifs. The year is 1942. Across the endless sands of North Africa, a storm is gathering. A massive armada, the largest the world has ever seen, approaches the coast. This is Operation Torch. For the first time, the Stars and Stripes flies alongside the Union Jack in a unified, grand assault. We are witnessing the birth of a new kind of warfare, where the Army and the Air Force move as one. But before the first tank tread could crush the desert sand, the path had to be cleared from above. To win the ground, we first had to win the sky. This was a war fought not just against a determined enemy, but against the elements themselves. The desert is a harsh mistress for delicate machinery. Our mechanics and engineers performed miracles, improvising repairs in blinding dust storms to keep these birds in the air. The strategy was bold: total air superiority. Our bombers, heavy and medium, became the hammer. They pounded the enemy's supply lines, their ports, and their airfields day and night. The majestic formations you see are strangling the enemy's lifeline, denying him the fuel and ammunition needed to wage war. Meanwhile, our fighters and fighter-bombers took on a terrifying new role. They became flying artillery for the infantry. Skimming the dunes at breakneck speeds, they disrupted tank columns and strafed fortified positions, breaking the morale of the opposing forces. It was a lesson learned in blood and perfected in the skies over Tunisia. The army that controls the air controls the battle. This campaign also marked a triumph of logistics. With rail lines sabotaged and roads mined, the sky became the only reliable highway. Cargo planes, unglamorous but essential, hauled tons of supplies to the front lines and evacuated the wounded on their return trips. They were the veins and arteries of the Allied advance. As the ring tightened around Tunis, the air war reached a fever pitch. The enemy, boxed in against the sea, found no sanctuary. The skies belonged to the Allies. What you are about to see is the record of that relentless pressure. It is the story of how the Allies proved that together they could drive the enemy from a continent and look north toward the liberation of Europe. This is the story of how the sky was won. This is Tunisian victory.
It has been a few years since the skies over Europe fell silent. The great conflict of 1939 to 1945 is now the domain of history, a time of profound sacrifice and unprecedented industrial might that reshaped our entire world. When we look back on that war, what do we see? We remember the newsreels, the photographs, and the films. The film was the record, the testament. It was the only way for a nation to understand the new, terrible scale of 20th century warfare. In no theater was this scale more evident than in the skies over the Third Reich. This was a new kind of war, a war of systems, of logistics, of endless fleets of heavy bombers. It was a war fought not just by pilots, but by thousands of navigators, bombardiers, radio men, and gunners, all flying in vast, complex formations. It was a war of numbers, of weather charts, and of cold, hard industrial attrition. How could you explain this to the people back home? How could you show the sheer staggering complexity of a single mission, an operation involving thousands of men, hundreds of aircraft, and a 24-hour cycle of meticulous planning and brutal execution? The answer came in 1944. The War Department itself produced a feature-length film to show the American people exactly what their sons, brothers, and husbands were doing. The film was called Target for Today. What you were about to see is a prologue to that original, remarkable film. Target for Today is a unique document. It is not a story of fictional heroics. It is a cold, factual, and gripping procedural. It takes you inside the entire nerve-wracking process, from the first intelligence briefing where a single photograph of a German factory is chosen, to the final anxious debriefing as the crews return, mission accomplished. The film had a secret weapon of its own. Its director was not a government bureaucrat, but Colonel William Keeley. In civilian life, Keeley was one of the top directors at Warner Brothers, a master of the fast-paced drama. He joined the Army Air Force's first motion picture unit, trading his Hollywood soundstage for the freezing, flak-filled skies over Germany. He understood how to tell a story, but the most important fact of this film is its cast. There are no actors. Every man you will see is an active duty member of the 8th Air Force. The generals planning the raid are real generals. The crew chief, the navigator, the young waist gunner, they are all the real article, reenacting their own daily perilous lives for the camera. The aircraft they fly are not pristine props. They are the real battle-scarred heavy bombers of the mighty 8th. This was a film made to train, to inform, and to build morale. It was a message to the workers in the factories, showing them why the rivets they bucked and the wires they connected were the difference between life and death. And then, the long, cold flight home. A flight measured in hours, anxiously watching the fuel gauges, tending to the wounded, and counting the parachutes of those who wouldn't make it back. The film's final, crucial act is the debriefing. Here, exhausted men, still buzzing from combat, report their findings to the intelligence officers. Every fighter sighting, every flak battery location, every detail of the bomb run is recorded. This information was the lifeblood of the campaign, the hard-won data that would shape the next mission, the target for tomorrow. The objective of defeating Nazi Germany and fascism across Europe was pivotal, and the movie was a mirror. It was created to show the American people and the world the sheer, overwhelming scale of this new kind of warfare against ruthless regimes. It showed the factory worker in Wichita or Detroit that the bomber they helped build was part of a vast, complex, and professional military operation to liberate countries from tyranny. It was a testament to the idea that this war was not being fought by a special class of warrior, but by the citizens of a democracy, the greatest generation. The generals, the pilots, the ground crews, they were all part of a single, unified effort. As we watch this footage, restored and preserved, it stands as a unique time capsule. It is an unvarnished window into the daily courage and cold, professional calm of the men who flew into the very heart of the Reich. In broad daylight, it is a tribute to their skill, their sacrifice, and their quiet, determined resolve to see the job through.
I first flew the P-47 in 1944, and my impression on getting into the cockpit was, well, if you get tired of flying this aircraft, I can go for a walk around the stick. It's, to me, and I'm, as you see, a fairly small stature, 5'7", and it really was gigantic. It's a big airplane anyway. For a single-seat fighter, it is a very large airplane. But my first impression was that do you really need this amount of airplane to fight? I know it had a huge engine, but I've seen airplanes much more streamlined with as much horsepower, and altogether my general impression was that something had ballooned in design unnecessarily. It was fast as a fighter, but when it got into Europe, it found its Achilles heel. That was the European war, unlike the Japanese war, or the Far East War, was fought laterally up at about 30,000 feet. And the Jaguar P-47 could get up there, all right, but it could not fight up there because it was so bulky, the wings were so thick. You had beautiful view from the canopy and everything. There were no criticisms that way. The cockpit layout, all right, a bit untidy, I would say, but generally acceptable. What was not acceptable was the fact that the aircraft performance in the transonic region was very poor. Very poor indeed. Compared, for example, with the Spitfire, it was sadly lacking in speed performance.
This is Kelly Johnson, Vice President in charge of the Advanced Development Project at Lockheed Skunk Works. What you are about to watch is the final manufacturing stages of Lockheed's D-21 pilotless aircraft and the first flight for the joint MD-21 configuration.
In the high-stakes chess game of the Cold War, altitude and speed are the kings of the board. As the Iron Curtain descends and the world divides into opposing camps, the need for intelligence becomes paramount. We must see what the adversary is hiding, but the skies have become lethal. The era of slow-flying reconnaissance is over. To survive over hostile territory, a machine must outrun the very missiles designed to destroy it. It must fly higher than the atmosphere allows standard engines to breathe. From the secret hangars of American industry comes a radical solution. It is a marriage of titanium and pure velocity. We are witnessing the birth of a vehicle that pushes the boundaries of thermodynamics. A pilotless aircraft designed to cruise at over 3 times the speed of sound. The engineering challenges here are immense. The heart of this new drone is a Marquardt ramjet engine. It is a beast of an engine, simple in design, but complex in operation. Unlike a standard turbojet, it has no compressor to suck in air. It relies on sheer forward velocity, supersonic velocity, to ram air into the intake with enough pressure to sustain combustion. This creates a unique problem. the machine cannot take off on its own. It is a creature of the stratosphere, helpless on the ground. To give it life, it must be carried aloft. It requires a mothership of equal capability, a booster stage that can sprint to Mach 3 and 80,000 feet before releasing its charge. The aerodynamics of carrying a 40-foot drone on the back of a supersonic aircraft are terrifying. The shock waves generated by both vehicles interact, creating a volatile environment where a single miscalculation leads to catastrophe. Once released, this autonomous bird navigates by the stars and an inertial heart, gathering intelligence on a one-way mission. It carries no landing gear. Its return ticket is a hatch. What you are about to see is a rare glimpse into the manufacturing and testing of this classified marvel. It is a testament to the men who work in the shadows, bending the laws of physics to serve the cause of freedom. This is the cutting edge of aerospace technology, where the only limit is the heat barrier itself.
By 1943, the skies over the Third Reich had become a relentless battlefield. Allied bomber formations flew deeper into German territory, and for the Luftwaffe, the challenge was no longer just superiority, it was survival. A new interceptor was needed, a weapon that could close the distance to the bombers at incredible speed, strike with overwhelming firepower, and escape before the swarms of escort fighters could react. From the drawing boards of the Dornier Company came an answer so radical that it seemed to defy aviation wisdom. The design, codenamed 335 and nicknamed the File, or Arrow, was built around a revolutionary idea: a tandem push-pull engine configuration. One powerful engine was mounted in the nose, pulling, while a second identical engine was buried in the rear fuselage, pushing. It wasn't just an engineering curiosity, it was a brilliant solution to the problem of drag. By placing both massive engines in the fuselage, Claudius Dornier created an airframe with the power of a twin-engine fighter, but the streamlined profile of a single-engine one. The result was staggering. The Dornier Do 335 was, quite simply, the fastest piston-engined aircraft of the Second World War, capable of outrunning any Allied fighter, including the P-51 Mustang. It was a heavy fighter that flew with the speed of a light one, bristling with cannons. But this technological marvel was incredibly complex. It required one of the very first operational ejection seats, a necessity born from the deadly risk of bailing out into a spinning rear propeller. Like so many of Germany's late-war Wunderwaffen, the Do 335 was a case of too little, too late. Plagued by delays and the chaos of a collapsing Reich, the Arrow never reached mass production. It remains one of the most fascinating what-ifs of the air war, a glimpse into a future that arrived just as history was closing its doors. Yet the story of the Arrow did not end in 1945. Its final secret chapter was written by its former enemies. Allied forces, desperate to understand its radical design, captured the surviving prototypes. Shipped to America and Britain and flown by astonished test pilots, the File's advanced concepts were studied intensely, its engineering DNA influencing the next generation of high-performance aircraft that would define the dawn of the Cold War.
During the Second World War, the skies were a brutal testing ground. From the desperate defense of Britain's shores to the relentless strategic campaigns that struck at the enemy's heartland, British aviation became a linchpin of the Allied war machine, perfecting piston engine technology under the relentless pressure of total war. In the summer of 1940, the war was a battle for survival. The Royal Air Force, outnumbered but unbowed, met the challenge with a new generation of single-seat fighters. These were the 8-gun interceptors, the rugged workhorses and the graceful thoroughbreds that held the line against the aerial armada sent to break them. In the hands of a few, these machines saved a nation. While the island was defended, another war was waged in the vast, empty ocean. a war of supply. Here, giant four-engined flying boats became the guardians of the convoys. They were the flying porcupines, bristling with guns, built to hunt the U-boat and endure grueling patrols far from any land. But to win, Britain had to strike back. A new force of heavy four-engined night bombers was forged. These were the machines that carried the war to the enemy's industrial heart. Powered by four of the finest piston engines ever created, these giants flew for hours in the dark. A small crew of 7 battling flak, fighters, and the elements to deliver a new kind of industrial-scale destruction. This was the zenith of the piston age, an arsenal of machines honed by 6 years of desperate, continuous combat. But even as victory was celebrated, a new reality dawned. The jet age had arrived, and with it, the atom bomb. The rule book of air power had been torn apart. Sheer survival now depended on radical new thinking. Piston power gave way to the quest for Mach 1 and beyond, demanding giant swept-wing and delta-wing bombers capable of flying at the very edge of the atmosphere. The need for speed became absolute, sparking designs that married rocket boosters to jet engines, pure interceptors built to claw their way to a target in mere minutes. It was a golden age of design, born from necessity.
In the great technological contest of the Cold War, with the world watching, a new frontier was calling. The dark, silent void of space. In 1954, a bold and ambitious program was born, a joint venture to answer the most challenging questions of high-speed, high-altitude flight. The goal was to build a machine that was part aircraft, part rocket, a true bridge to the stars. From this monumental effort came one of the most remarkable flying machines ever created, the North American X-15. This is the story of that machine, told with stunningly restored footage from the era. The X-15 was unlike anything that had come before it, forged from a special nickel-chrome alloy called Inconel X. Its black skin was designed to withstand the searing 2,000-degree temperatures of hypersonic flight. This was not an airplane that took off from a runway. It was a winged rocket, carried aloft under the wing of a massive B-52 bomber and dropped into the thin air of the stratosphere. From its launch point, the pilot would ignite a colossal rocket engine, unleashing over 60,000 pounds of thrust that pinned him to his seat. The X-15 would then scream upwards, climbing at an impossible angle towards the edge of space. Here, the air was too thin for conventional rudders or ailerons to work. The pilot became an astronaut, using small hydrogen peroxide thrusters on the nose and wings to maintain control, just like a real spacecraft. A select group of 12 legendary pilots, including men like Neil Armstrong, flew the X-15. They were America's first true astronauts, pushing the envelope on 199 missions. They reached incredible speeds of over 4,500 miles per hour, Mach 6.7, and soared to altitudes over 67 miles high, crossing the Kármán line into the blackness of space. The data gathered from these perilous flights was not just for setting records. It was the foundation upon which America's entire space program, including the space shuttle, would be built.
Using the same glider to power plane conversion, the massive Messerschmitt 323 was another attempt to maximize the Luftwaffe's airborne assets.
The Gigant, I saw the 4-engine version and the 6-engine version of the Gigant. In fact, I taxied the 6-engine version. It wasn't airworthy, but I taxied it just as a matter of interest. It was a vast airplane, called glider, of course, and the one I taxied was the D model, and it had 6 gnome-rome engines, and The four-engine one had proved difficult, inadequate number of engines, and still had to have some assisted takeoff, such as JATO, or rocket assistance on takeoff. As pure gliders towed by aircraft like the Heinkel 111Z, they were a failure, in my opinion. You had 3 Heinkel aircraft playing around with this, all the large Z, and all of them, the whole thing was a very dicey operation indeed. But once you got the 6-engine version going, it was practicable, but of course, it was a large, sluggish airplane.
Because of its great size and slow speed, the Me-323 was a sitting duck, and many were destroyed by the Allies. But when escorted by fighters, its ability to carry large loads was much valued by the Wehrmacht, especially in the mayhem that became the Eastern Front.